money. This is a primary contention of his presentation. We're using too much oil money. We need to save more because we can't be certain about future prices. And then he proceeded to lay out a plan that would double spending from oil resources. And not just double spending from oil resources in a sustainable manner, but double it only for recurrent expenditure, not for capital expenditure. So on the 3rd of February, the Starbuck News carried an article, no doubt quoting from a press release that the PNC put in the public domain, stating that the cost of the social program that they're proposing in the future would be $800 billion. That they costed it, and it would be $800 billion. On the very same day, on the Leader of the Opposition page, he said, we anticipate spending $600 billion on our social program. It's very same day, $800 billion, and carried in Starbuck News based on a press release they issued, and then on his Facebook post in his office of the Leader of the Opposition, it's going to cost $600 billion. Now, $200 billion of mistake is a huge mistake. If you can't, that's why we said they have problem with numbers. But I do not want to fall prey to this attempt to make it seem like they have an alternative budget. So what they did, every promise of the People's Progressive Party, everything we have done, they just said, we will do more. If we promise to raise the threshold by 130,000, or by a sum to get up to 100,000, they've decided we will do this by a factor of 3 more, increase it by a factor of 3. Without any thought to sustainability or its impact on the budget. It's easy to do that. And so when there was an attempt by some people in social media to enumerate all their promises, like the Kaichor News article, the Starbuck News article carried, and to compare those with the People's Progressive Party's what it's actually doing, I said to the guys, you're wasting your time. That's not an alternate budget. That's just a party trying to fool people once again that they will do more than the PPP. So it requires no thought. Any fool, a clown, a donkey could come and say, I'll do 10 times more. A budget is a policy tool. It has to lay out a whole range of initiatives beyond just numbers, and for wealth creation, for welfare enhancement, for the safety of the people of the country. It's a document that allows you to achieve a stated vision. It's the annual expression of that vision. There is none of that there in the APNU AFC, except some stupid thing like, oh, we want to go to a demand-driven economy. When in a country, where in the world could a country like ours, a small country like ours, depend on a demand-driven economy to drive prosperity? It has to be export-oriented. And that's known economic theory. but just to drop in something that makes it sound as though it's high economics. So they had none of that, and our guys were busy comparing, costing their things, and I said, are you wasting your time? Why do you have to compare? Because it's not like it's even serious. First of all, they can't do it. They would fulfill anything that they say. They're untrustworthy. And two, this was not given thought. Look how many times they keep changing the numbers and different people announcing different things and then coming up with all sorts of things. For example, they now put out another iteration of this today. They said up to 35% increase for in wages and salaries for 70,000 government workers. This is what they plan to do. So this will cost $290 billion. Now, in our current budget, we have $227 billion for wages and salaries. So if they mean by this that it will go from 227 to 290 billion, that means over 5 years a 27.7% increase, which works out to about 5% per year, if that's what they mean. If they mean that 35% per year that they will give, and it will cost $290 billion more, when you add the 227 that we already have in the budget for wages and salaries and the 290, you get $517 billion. In this budget, all the oil money that they say we're spending too much of is just $512 billion. So it's pure nonsense. You're spending more on wages and salaries, if that's what they mean, that they're going to give a 35% increase per year. You're going to be spending more money on wages and salaries only in the public sector than we collect now. And then the leader of the opposition gets up and says, too much spending. We must be careful about oil prices being reduced. And once you increase wages, you know you can't cut it. You can cut a capital project. You can stop building a school or a road, but you can't cut back wages for people. It's recurrent expenditure. So if they didn't mean the 290 billion was additional to what we have now, then it means that they're offering a 5% increase in wages and salaries per year for the next 5 years if they win power. Now, we have a multi-year agreement which says that already, I think for next year, it's 8%. I think it was 10 last year, 9 this year, and 8% next year for the for the public servants, and well, not public servants because they have a 2 years agreement, but for the teachers. So pure utter nonsense with these numbers. I just gave you one example of it. And so when you see them put out all of this every day, and the mainstream media helps them magnify it without critically questioning these things, where are the reporters? Why aren't the reporters doing their job of questioning these things? Why would you leave it only to a political party to rebut it? This matters. What politicians say matter, especially when you have a track record like the PNC. Someone needs to question these issues on sustainability. I just looked at it. This came out 51 minutes ago, apparently, when they sent it to me today, and I could just notice that immediately. But this has been coming out for the past week, the contradictions. 800 billion one time, 600 billion another time that it will cost. One measure alone, if implemented, will just Every cent of oil money goes to wages and salaries, only for the public sector. So nothing else can be spent on anything else. And then they complain about us using too much oil money. And the fact of the matter is that in this year's budget, only 37% is funded from the oil sector, oil and gas sector. So this is something that we have to address seriously. APNU, AFC have no vision. They have no plan for the future. These are the people who are saying on one hand, this is what we will do, and then almost simultaneously say, on the other hand, say, we will hire specialists to tell us what to do when we get into office. That is what they've been saying. Not only here, but in the oil and gas sector. We will hire specialists to review the 2016 PSA to tell us basically if we can change it or what we will do. And then on one hand saying we are thinking about changing it, but we'll hire the specialists to do that. They don't know what's wrong with the 2016 PSA up to now, although they signed it. With all of the criticism of it in the public domain, they need to hire a specialist to tell them that. And so they make all these promises, and then they say, we will hire a specialist to tell you what economic plan we will pursue in the future. So you can't pay serious attention to the promises themselves. So there has been, so this lack of vision is a troubling thing. AFC, and you heard what Nigel Yu said too. It's the same like the PNC. Let's get together and create a plan for the future. They don't have any for a party that's already been in office for ages. They don't have any plan for the future. So you can't pay any attention to anything they've said. They want to increase old age pension to 100,000. They haven't costed it as yet. Imagine wages and salaries alone in the public sector, gone with all the oil money. So in their proposal, that they just put on their site and they've been talking about the whole week. If you just dig into the numbers, you will find out how ridiculous they are, ludicrous they are, and it represents the confusion in that camp. Can't believe anything they said. They don't understand sustainability, even if it hits them in their head. So the next thing I want to talk about briefly is this thing about Norton mentioned. We don't understand and we ignore the plight of the citizens of the country in the PPP. And somehow the PNC will implement another catchphrase, a people-centered development, you know. So they drop these things in, they pull them out of UN documents and just talk about them because it sounds good. It sounds good, but they don't understand what it takes to implement them. So first of all, demand-driven economy. Now it's people-centered development, and that we ignore the plight of ordinary people. This is rich coming from a party that practically decimated every group of people. From pensioners, they took away their free water. The children, they took away their cash grant. The Amerindians, they took away their jobs. The sugar workers, they took away jobs from them. The farmers, they impose a whole range of taxes, cut the budget for farm to market roads and D&I. The bauxite workers lost their jobs, 1,000 of them at Kwakwani. In the forestry sector, 500 people lost their jobs in Linden, the community forest workers. The miners, we talked about this last week, they not only increased the taxes, put it on VAT on machinery and equipment, but made it so hard, miners even couldn't transport fuel. They had to bring out their machines from the hinterland to get them licensed. Taxi drivers got shafted when they just decided that to appease their own people who are importing new tires, they just ban used tires. But the people, it was just, so I can list the whole thing, and they're people-centered. They're people-centered. Look what we have done. We've restored the grant, the water subsidy, the electricity subsidy to the pensioners, and also in double old age pension. We've given the children their money back and increased it to $50,000. We've removed all the discriminating policies against forestry sector, mining, agriculture. Every group in Guyana we've practically worked with. Farmers now have more support. The miners have more support. People in the forestry sector, in every sector of the economy, more jobs are created. So this nonsense about we ignore the plight of citizens and they're the ones who are concerned about people is so irksome, because it's far from the truth. And for you to stand there with a straight face and deliver a speech saying this, you have to be living in a different planet to believe this, or you have to be mentally, you have to stretch our imagination and be mentally deficient to actually say this with a straight face. I can't imagine anyone would be saying this sort of thing in a budget speech, and he says it with a straight face, that they will. It's not just about expanding benefit. They'll cut every tax that you have. So they're eliminating the source of revenue, a source of revenue that we have to pay for the expansive measures that they're proposing. They're complaining that oil and gas revenue may fall in the future. And yet they want to cut taxes and expand spending. That's for an ordinary person. You're managing a budget in your home. Just imagine applying the same logic to your home. So you want to cut your source of income, your wages and salaries, and you want to expand your expenditure. That is precisely what they're proposing, and they think it's sustainable. But they did this in the past. That's why it's so relevant to go back to the past, because they have not changed one iota. It's the same sort of economic philosophy that led to us accumulating a debt that was 9 times the size of our economy, and that took over 100% of revenue to service the debt. We lost development because of the obligation to repay that debt. We lost maybe 10 years of development. In fact, we lost not just welfare, we decumulated wealth as a country for a long period under Upton. Decumulated wealth in the aggregate and in an individual form, both at the company level and at the individual level. The individual level, it was expressed in higher levels of poverty. The Ramprakash study, which was CMAP, 87% of our people were living under poverty. At the company level, we practically lost all of our indigenous companies. There was no private sector growth. That's the history. That's the history of the PNC. And it was a sordid history, and I detest the attempt by some to including in the media, to say, oh, don't go back into the past. But if they're repeating the past, they have not changed one bit. Like they have not changed on the attempt to steal elections. They have not changed on their old dated outlook. So the leader of the opposition stands in the parliament to show that he lives in a different world, maybe in the past. And he attempts to defend the banning of food items. Say he supports it fully when it was banned in the 70s and the 80s. When food items were prohibited, you couldn't eat certain things. So they don't want us to talk about the past, but he could go back and say they had a great policy of banning food items from the past and defends it in the parliament in 2025. But it was not the banning of the food items that Norton missed. And I hope now that he is taking us back into that period, that people in this country, particularly young people, they got a chance to see the PNC in action and AFC in action, because they're the same, trying to steal elections in 2020. So it was reliving the past in a contemporary situation. So they got to see how the PNC would behave, that they would lie. And even up to now, I saw Nigel Hughes saying, basically, nothing happened. They didn't rig the elections. Mingo didn't do anything wrong. He didn't falsify the results of the statements of poll. This is the reality of it. Just imagine in an era when the state controlled all the sources of information, media. There was no private media at that time. And the PPP occasionally had to get, like, smuggle in newsprint from parts of the world. They used to be checked. Police would come to check where you got your newsprint. You could get locked up for it to publish anything. There was no private media, all state media. And we didn't have, at that time, social media. So just imagine when they tried to rig the elections. No, you couldn't get a groundswell of public opinion knowing what they were doing. And that is the era they thrived under, stealing elections. So young people got a chance to see this, but they don't know about the era of banning of food items. We grew up in that period. So it wasn't the banning that was so bad that Norton defended in the budget this year. It was what they did to every single Guyanese. They made us criminals for eating bread. When we ate bread made from wheat, whether you're a PPP supporter or a PNC supporter, if you ate a loaf of bread or a slice of bread made from wheat, or they caught you with a slice of bread, you would go to jail. You could go to jail. They would lock you up. That is what he didn't address. If they caught you with a can of sardines, then you could go to jail. They criminalize us and our children. Parents who wanted to feed their kids a slice of bread became criminals under the laws that they passed in this country. That's what he didn't address. Criminalizing every Guyanese and your parents and everyone else for eating potatoes or sardines or having, maybe something else in your home or a loaf of bread. There are a long list of things. They made us all criminals for what we ate. And that's the legacy of the PNC. And he's proud in 2025 in the National Assembly to defend it. These are dated people. They've not updated themselves from that era, as we saw with the elections. They're incapable of managing anything because they have a dated philosophy. They will steal elections. And three, they'll continue to use racism to divide our people. And thankfully now people are seeing through that, and we're breaking that barrier. This is how they survive. And so when people say, I see in a couple editorials, oh, the PP likes to go back to the past. We have to go back to the past because this guy is proud of his past. He's so proud of his past. He talked about it. We did a great job by banning these food stuff in Parliament now. And nobody said that why he went back to the past, but let us mention anything because they want us to forget what happened in that period. Why do you think so many of our people fled in that period? Guyana fled to Suriname, to Venezuela, to North America. They didn't have freedom. Elections were stolen. You could go to jail for what you said, because if you criticize the government, they come and lock you up. You could go to jail for what you ate. Couldn't find jobs. So that was their legacy after 28 years in government. And they didn't fare better recently. So I'm not going to go into other elements of his speech, because I just looked at that one, that he is still living in the past, to the confusion, contradictions in their promise measures, the short-sightedness of it, the lack of a framework for situating the budget in, the duplicity of their arguments. These were all rife in his speech. They were very, very prominent. When you strip everything out, which was all rhetoric, then it will boil down to some of these issues. Can I get a coffee there to give me tea here? And I need some coffee. So maybe I should just conclude on budget-related issues before I move on to two things I want to address today that the President spoke at length about, and Anil Nandalal also in his program gave great details, further details about. That is our land policy, land distribution policy, whether it is corrupt or not, and this Sherwin Graves matter. I will speak of those two issues later. Let me now just continue with the budget, because we can't allow a few things to stand. So there's Kaichor News, Valda Lawrence said budget 2025 filled with slush funds for elections campaign. And they have a long list here. So anyone reading this would think you have like maybe close to $2 billion of slush fund for the PPP campaign in these ministries, because it's a big chart. They would believe this. Now, first of all, for Valda Lawrence to talk about slush fund, it's unbelievable. I recall in 2020, they were awarding contracts through the Natural Resources Ministry to various people to produce a whole range of stuff for elections. And they were all not for elections, ostensibly for PR campaign for the Natural Resources Ministry, oil and gas sector. They put up some billboards and stuff. But they were producing all of the election-related material for PNC. all of this. In 2025, we would have elections. We will win those elections. We will not spend government money to campaign. We're already making plans to get all of our material in place, and these are all funded from money that we will raise. We don't need to use state funds. Between the no confidence motion, when we didn't have a parliament meeting thereafter, just twice, illegally, to August 2nd of 2020, APNU spent $419.5 billion without parliamentary approval. In the whole election, they paid for everything because there was no oversight. $419.5 billion. This is a fact. Their entire 2020 campaign was funded billions of dollars. They handed out everywhere. We now have a parliament, we have oversight, we have everything. They did it without parliamentary approval. So if we allow this lie, because it was answered fully in Parliament, but sometimes people don't pay attention. And Kaicho News put a whole table of all the slush funds that the PPP will benefit from. But this is a lie. It's coming from Volder, of course. So they have, for example, Ministry of Education, $321 million here on program 40262, line item 6284. Guess what it's budgeted for? For increase caters for literacy and mathematics intervention program. But they have it as a slush fund here. Because Vala Lawrence just maybe talk off the top of her head. They don't already have it in black and white. It's a slush fund for the PP. But this is for literacy and mathematics intervention, the money. And they have $1 billion here, and the increase cater for One Guyana Digital School Initiative. This is something we've spoken about. We are moving now not to just, in COVID, we had to launch a whole range of digital initiatives to ensure that our children could still get some level of tuition at home. It wasn't done uniformly because we had limitations, especially based on access to instruments to access the internet and the internet itself, the availability of internet in many communities and homes. So we were challenged. From then on, we have been working at expanding digital initiatives to ensure our children get better tuition. We are moving now beyond just using ICT and the improvements in ICT to deliver the curriculum, or curriculum in some areas, or some elements of the curriculum. We spoke here about giving people choices. When I spoke here about how much money we're spending now per child, it would be over $800,000 now per child, maybe, in public school. In the private sector, people charge for tuition per year, average is about $300,000, maybe $350,000. So we're spending twice as much as in private schools for tuition. We said we want to explore, since our ultimate goal is to get our children the best quality education and to get to the best output in terms of passes. The method is not so important. Whichever is the most effective method, we have to explore. We have an obligation to do that. So we said we will explore voucher system, maybe giving parents choices. So you give them a voucher and they decide in the future. We haven't settled that as yet. We're still exploring it. It's not part of this year's budget. But maybe they then can choose which school they want to send their kids to. Secondly, we said we want to do a full e-school model. So a child maybe, especially those who are challenged, both physically and mentally challenged, that they can get a full education without even leaving their home. Because many of our schools don't cater for special needs kids, and it would be a big challenge to have every school cater for special needs kids. Having such an e-school model would allow us optionally to do a number of things. So up to yesterday, I had a conversation with someone, and he said to me, why don't we have, like some of the elders in the indigenous communities go into the schools to teach the children, say, the language, the 9 different tribes in Ghana. And I said, but this might be a bit of a challenge, because in some communities you have kids, they're different languages. So maybe you have 2 or 3 tribes in that region. And then it may be limited to the school kids. But imagine a module like this, where it's taught online, and everybody in the whole country has access to that program. Just imagine that. So parents, if you're teaching Arawak, and you may be able to, every child or their parent can then go onto that program, log in there, and be taught the Arawak language or any other language. We could teach Swahili, we could teach Hindi, but not overload the school with it and having to find new teachers, and then broaden the access, not only to kids. This is the way we're thinking about it. So this is the work on getting a full e-school model in the future. We want to be able to do that. If we're promising world-class education, we have to get it done. Valda Lawrence thinks it's a slush fund, and Kaituo News has it here, 1 billion slush fund for the BP. So the ministry now has a local government, they listed 300 million as a slush fund. Guess what? This is for landfill sites. They're new to operationalize across the country. This year budget, you heard, we're giving a bigger subvention to the local government bodies because we want them to focus on cleaning up cemeteries, the small D&I work. You saw Plaisance, an excavator was handed over there recently. The next day they deployed it in operation, but almost all the NDCs will get that. And also to do better garbage collection. We're putting in 300 million for the new landfill sites to assist. That's a slush fund Valda Lawrence listed, and it's in Kaituo News, PPP slush fund for the elections. You can't let these things go unanswered. Although it's done in Parliament, or else people run away with the lies that they're told. They have nothing to talk about, especially coming from a party that just raped the Treasury when they were there. Raped the Treasury. Can't find any other word to talk about. Another issue that came out in the budget was that the Minister of, it's in the Kaituo or some one of these papers again, that Minister Vikram Bharat refused to name the companies that were awarded contracts through the auction. The auction, the oil and gas auction that we had, and that refused to name the companies. Now, I think the minister was just frustrated, like I am sometimes, because they're going to Parliament to try to find out what was in the public domain for almost a year. If you just Google it, you will find it. We had When the bids were closed, we listed all the companies. I sat right here and listed the companies that were successful in the bids. Many times I was asked thereafter, have we concluded with these companies? And I said no, and I explained the reasons why. Right here. Now they made that look like it's a secret thing. The Kaichor News, just looking for headlines again. And that the minister wanted to preserve the secrecy surrounding this. There was no secrecy. There was a public tender. We announced this here. And that came out of the budget. But what bothered me more is that the opposition elements had to go to the parliament to try to find out this when they could just read what was in the public domain. They didn't know. They didn't know. They just don't read anything. And then we have to like baby them all the time, spoon feed them with information. That's not a role of government. We put out the information. If you're too lazy to read, then it's your business. But then it doesn't work this way. Because even some of the newspapers, like Kaichor News, is too lazy to read back what they themselves publish. And they carry this sort of stuff. So it's an example in the budget of laziness. Laziness, that's what I wanted to deal with. Another thing that came out, government dumped $5.9 billion of expired drugs between 2022 to 2024. And Valda Lawrence said that. Now, this issue was raised in the past. And this is the press release almost about several months ago. And the ministry put out a press release. It was in the public domain, answered fully. So, let me just read one little piece for you because you can read the press release itself. The ministry wishes to clarify that the expired medications, medical supplies, and laboratory supplies in question date back to before 2022, and in some instances were from 2019 and beyond. These are now being responsibly disposed of by national and international safety protocols. For the medications bought in 2023, $12.5 million worth expired, or 0.1, not 1%, 0.1 of the amount bought in 2023. And similarly, in 2024, $13.4 million, or 0.06. Okay? 0.06 expired. So this is our track record. 2023, not even 1% expired in 2023 that was being disposed, and 2024, it's not even 1%. The drugs they explained that were being disposed of, some from period before we got into office, where we had to dispose of $10 billion of drugs that they bought from everyone, drugs and medical supplies. A man used to walk in with a suitcase, go into the ministry, and they bought it from him. You remember the drug bond? We don't even talk about the drug bond now. So much corruption that we stopped even talking about the drug bond, where they were renting a house and calling it a drug bond for $62,000 a month in South Georgia. I think it's Sussex Street, and calling it a drug bond. That is what happened. And then some of that were destroyed too came from the COVID period that we bought, because you bought a lot of masks and all of those things, and a whole range. Some expired from that period because the COVID ended. So now in 2025, Valda Lawrence questions this. And it says 5.9 expired drugs between 2024. Makes a headline again, but it was raised before and answered. And this is something that we have to deal with every single week. Patterson again. So they imagine Mr. Sticky Finger talking about the local content law, and the thing that they didn't pass, that we urged them to pass from 2016, they didn't pass it. They succumbed to the oil and gas companies who didn't want it, who said they would have to shut operations if we pass it. That will bring benefits to our Guyanese. They refused to pass it. Now he's saying, oh, we didn't expand the benefits now. But already 1,000 Guyanese companies are benefiting from this. We now have 10,000 people working in the sector who wouldn't have gotten jobs if we didn't pass that, because they were going to bring in people for everything under the sun. And it's nearly $700 million US of business. That's an achievement of the PPP. They're making an achievement of the PPP look like a negative thing. We didn't amend the local content law. And so the same thing with the audit. So, and the Petroleum Commission I dealt with that 100 times before. The Petroleum Commission, I dealt with it 100 times before. I don't even need to deal with it again. But it shows they have nothing to say, really. And the elephant in the room is renegotiation. These are the corrupt people who were part of that negotiation, who stuck us with a contract now, pretending to be national in their orientation. So those are just some of the things I wanted to say in the budget that have come out. There are lots of things like those, and we have to. A little headline gets stuck in the paper and misrepresents the track record of the PPP. I've given only a couple of instances, 2 or 3 instances here. You can find them every day in the newspapers. And it represents also, apart from the political orientation, because Glenn Lal wants to start a party, so he wants to make the PP look bad, so he'd give all the opposition elements there, elevate what they say. But it represents really shoddy journalism. Nobody says this matter before writing it. They say the matter was addressed already before, or put what the government had explained before. It's shoddy journalism. Now, let me address the land issue. So, President Ali, as I said before, dealt extensively with this matter, and Anil Nandalal. And they will, especially Anil, will continue to release, we've asked him to continue to release all the details, because sometimes it's too burdensome to give you all the details of the criminality of the PNC and AFC as they relate to land issues. So this matter arose to prominence when Nigel Hughes, a few weeks ago, released elements of a contract between CHMP and Ed Ahmad, and questioned the price of the transaction. So let me address this, and then I'll come back and talk about Ed Ahmad, the sheriff group, and everything else. So first of all, Nigel Hughes released a contract, so I don't think he will have any problem if I were to give you today some public documents. So he went subsequently on Rickford Burt program 2 days ago, and you know, I've said that already, that if you have to go on a criminal's talk show, and Rickford Burke is a criminal, and I think he's desperate, but Trump doesn't like criminals too much. So I think he's desperate now, trying to reorient his lifestyle over there. But Nigel Hughes, getting no traction elsewhere, tries to get some level of publicity if you go to his program from the lunatic fringe. So Nigel Hughes says a couple of days ago on that program that we must pause all sale of land or anything, for example, because this is election year. This is Nigel Hughes. So on the face of it, it sounds reasonable. I have here 3 documents I'm going to share with you. One, Nigel Hughes on the 24th of October 2019 got 25 acres of leased land, prime lands. Now, you recall the date, 24th October 2019 was after the no confidence had passed, after the CCJ had ruled in June that the no confidence is valid, and said that the government must be in a caretaker mode. We're not in a caretaker mode. We're a government vested with full powers until the elections. And he wants us to pause on transactions, any transaction this year because it's election year. They had lost, the government had fallen, the CCJ had already ruled. The CCJ ordered that we go into a caretaker mode. You should see what the definition of a caretaker mode means. You can't conclude these transactions. But Nigel Hughes, after that, long after the CCJ ruling, months after it, secured land. They were giving land to him. He secured 25 acres there. So the elections came, and APNU lost the elections. And then on the 19th of March, after the elections, Nigel Hughes got another 25 acres of land, contiguous to the other one, and I'll share this with you too. And then, again on the 19th of March, he got another 25 acres of land. So 75 acres of land in the period 25 before the elections, but after the CCJ had ruled that we go into a caretaker mode, and 50 acres after the elections. I will share this with you because they have a strange way, the newspapers here, a strange way of representing things. There's a wild accusation against Susan Rodriguez, but already she's questioned as though she's a criminal. Every time we submit, we have in the public domain tons of documents about the criminality of some people or their transgressions, or in this case, the duplicity, like with Nigel Hughes. They never make the newspapers. They don't get published, they don't get broadcast. So I'm giving you here, so I hope that these could go on your social media pages and everywhere else to show this. Now just imagine 2 days ago he said we must pause. A legitimate government, not a government in caretaker mode, must pause on giving out lands. And he secured for himself the 75 acres of land after the CCJ had ruled and after the elections. I'm going to share this with you. Now, this is through Lands and Survey. Now, I'm not going to share this long list of PNC individuals who got land, many after the elections and in the period after the government had fallen. It's a long list of who's who in the PNC. And it represents tens of thousands of acres of land. If you look at this long list here. But I don't want, since those people are not, we didn't take back their land, but those people are not in the public. I'm just going to share the document on Nigel Hughes because he shared a document from CHNPA a couple of days ago and questioned the price. And we'll come to that in a moment. But I just wanted to talk about his duplicity here, what he said a couple nights ago. So you're going to have these when I'm done. 75 acres of land. So in relation to the land at Ogle, I will deal with the Nigel Hughes component first, and then come on to, and then tell you what else happened here. So in the period after the elections, just before the elections, after the no confidence motion, Nigel Hughes was representing a Trinidadian company. The Trinidadian company, through NISIL, Nigel Hughes was central to those negotiations, secured at Ogle 20 acres of land at $26 million per acre. Now you recall, the very same Nigel Hughes circulated a document from CHNPA and said that the $30 million for the Ed Ahmad deal that they had, or the Ed Ahmad agreement, was too low. We're giving away the land there at too low a price. It's a ripoff. But he, just before the elections, acting as the lawyer for the Trinidadian company, managed to secure through NISIL 20 acres, and this was the prime land, just next to the Nexon building. Prime land there, 20 acres at $26 million per acre. But he now says it's too low, this agreement. So that's one. That again represents the duplicity of Nigel Hughes. In addition to that, the same Trinidadian company got 10 acres of land, prime land at Earl's Court. And they represented that they were going to build in 4 years there a 72-story apartment building, a 72 apartment building, luxury building, in exchange for the low price that they got of $10 million per acre. This land was vested in them just before January or somewhere around that of 2020. I can give you dates later. Just before the election. 10 acres of land outside of the 20th Ogle at Earl's Court not a 10, but this time at 10 acres per land, per 10 acres, 10 million per acre. So what happened? Nigel Hughes was not just the lawyer for the company. The company that signed the agreement, he was an officer of the company. He became a director on that company, and he then became company secretary to the company that secured the land at 10 million per acre. So he, as an officer of the company, represented that they will build this luxury apartment building at Earl's Court. Within 4 years, they were vested the land. They had the land. Nothing has been built as yet, and there are penalties under that agreement. So this is Nigel Hughes now. I'm just talking about Nigel Hughes. You notice in everything that is controversial, he has his hands in it. He lies prolifically about the 1,200 young black person that we disappeared. Now he backtracks from it. But he was the one who removed the tape from the Hamilton gas station. So we didn't know who killed, we don't know who killed Hamilton. He was the one who represented the killers of the children and others at Lusignan in the massacre, expresses sympathy for them, but then now recently for the victims, but then was also the judge ordered that they be an investigation into jury tampering because that he was involved in, again there. I can go down a long list of issues, almost everything. So now again, imagine this man, Nigel Hughes, releasing somebody's agreement and saying the 30 million per acre that they paid there is too low. And he negotiated in an area even more prime than the area that they were allocated at 26 million per acre. Same area. And then got another piece of land just next door to that area for 10 million per acre with a promise of building an apartment building. And he was not just the lawyer for the company. So when he says, oh, I don't speak about my client, I saw him giving the Morar Waves article. He doesn't speak about his client's business. Well, he was an officer of the company. He was the director as well as the company secretary. So he is responsible for the statements that they made at that time, the representations they made to NISIL. How more disgusting can you get? How more disgusting can you get? Now, in relation to Ed Ahmad, I saw a story about Ed Ahmad and how he's a friend of Jagdeo, friend of the PPP, etc. So first of all, Ed Ahmad is a Guyanese too. He's naturalized in the United States. Preferential treatment of this individual because of connections to the PPP. The answer is absolutely not and cannot be proven. And I will tell you why. Now, I don't want to get into the sheriff group and their family feud. Don't drag the PPP into your business. Like I said, when one time Azruddin Mohammed and Tamesh Jagmohan and all the others were claiming that they're close to the PPP, as General Secretary, I made a public statement on that matter. If you perceive yourself close to the PPP and you do anything illegal, you're not going to be protected. You face the consequences if you engage in illegality. And we have consistently demonstrated that. Look at the Brutus. They were saying Brutus is in bed with the PPP. APNU said it. The AFC said it. Everybody. If Brutus was involved in criminal conduct, he faces the consequences. So whether it's Ed Ahmad or anyone else, or any other individual from abroad or locally, they engage in criminal conduct, they have to face the music. So let us look at what took place in the Ogle area, and then I will show you how we work based on systems and outcome, and how responsible we have been with managing land in this country. First of all, you would recall that as we approached the 2015 elections, there was this big hue and cry, just the same way like Nigel Hughes and the others are starting this up. Oh, the PPP giving all these lands to friends and family. And when we get into office, we will investigate this and we will charge people and everything else. That was the big campaign slogan of APNU at that one time. That was one, every platform they spoke about, they mentioned this, about giveaway of lands to friends and family. They're at it again. They came into office. They did an audit. They found nothing wrong. They couldn't lay a single charge except for Pradoville, where I live. Vindictively, they charged Irfan Ali 19 charges, only for Pradoville, not for the big lands that were given on the East Bank or anywhere else, just Pradoville, where I live, because it was vindictive. They're coming after me. 19 charges the president got for that. He was charged for selling land to Gary Best. That was one of his charges too. They like to make him seem like he had all these criminal charges, but it was all for that area because vindictively they came. They didn't need to find out I got land. It was in the public domain and the price I paid and everything long before they got into office. It wasn't any revelation. I'm living there up to now. But that was the only thing that they found because they did an audit. Guess what? The one man they took away the land from. So you have a lot of Indo-Guyanese and stuff. One person, guess who they took away the land from? Courtney Ben. The black guy, they took away his land. But you had a lot of Indo-Guyanese there who got land under the PPP, but they didn't take his land, their land. They took it from Courtney Ben. That was so much for friends and family. Big audit, etc. The big hue and cry, the same way they're going on now, because they're hoping that they will create a similar mood like 2015. Everybody is friends and family now. So let's look at friends and family. What they did, the PNC, they don't like us to talk about that, PNC and AFC. So the disposal of state assets when they close, the privatization and disposal of state assets. Let me tell you, in Rose Hall, they took, in sugar, they took all equipment from all their states, and without any public tender, they sold 65 pieces of equipment for 14.9 million Guyana dollars. 65 pieces of equipment. 20 tractors. These are the Pew tractors I'm talking about. 20 of those tractors. One of the tractors, you go and check the price, run into millions of dollars. Imagine they sold 20 tractors, crawlers, drag lines, pickups, total of 65 pieces of equipment for $14.9 million. No public tender. They handed it out to their own people who were connected. Not ordinary people, not ordinary supporters of the PNC. Corrupt individuals, and they just shared it out. And they collected a lot of kickbacks there. There was no valuation, no privatization board paper, no public tender, no cabinet paper. They just sold them. Now, this is the normal process. You have to value the asset, you have to do a public tender, you have to take it to the privatization board, then it goes to cabinet for approval. And that is how, remember the land at Movie Tongue I spoke about? That is how it went, and cabinet approved it, and then Ashni Singh and the others were charged for that. Although it went through the whole process, they were charged for it and put in handcuffs. Just imagine if we had to handcuff people here. A ton of them who are talking now, they'd be in jail. Because none of them didn't follow any of the procedures. That's 65 pieces of equipment for $14.9 million. At Wales, where they closed down there, they sold off the staff compound. At Enmore, they leased the staff compound to friends and family at Enmore. They sold off at Wales. So they gave out 7,138 acres of land. Remember these numbers. This was only, right, 7,138 acres of land. This surveyor in Nissil surveyor who earned over $100 million, he got 806 acres, and some people related to him got over 200 acres. So only the staff, one of their staff, not staff, but somebody who was doing all the surveying for Nissil, got over 100 million in payments. He got 1,000 acres. On 1,000 acres, you can do 5,000 house lots. 1,000 acres of land there. 5,543 acres there went to 16 individuals. 5,543 acres went to 16 individuals. That is only at Wales. That's how much they transferred. They transferred 7,000 odd acres, but 5,543 acres went to 16 persons. So I've dealt with two things. We've seen they've given out through lands and survey tens of thousands of acres. Nigel Hughes got 75 acres there. Now I'm just dealing with Wales, another 7,138 acres given out there at Wales. This is land here, the prime land here that we are now taking back to do 14,000 house lots there, because we don't have land there. Handed it over to 16 individuals. Let's talk about that. So that's Wales. Then Lands and Survey was around the country. So let's come to Ogle now, what they did here and how many acres were given out at Ogle. So no advertisement at Ogle again. Between March 2018 and July 2020, there are 23 transactions at Ogle. 335 acres of land just at Ogle there. So they had 16 agreements of sale and 7 leases, right? To get, that is what made up the 335 acres. 15 of the 23 transactions were done after the elections. 15 of the 23 transactions after the elections at Ogle. So those lands were sold at $30 million per acre. Now, 7 of them were vested. 7, that means they transferred the paper to 7 of individuals of the 23. They collected 44 million Guyana dollars, and these 7 persons at $30 million per acre, given the large amount of acreages, should have paid $2.7 billion. They collected $44 million and vested title to them. So you can, this is illegal. You can only vest if you receive full payment. So they only collected 44 million and vested land worth 2.7 billion based on the agreement of sale to these individuals. This is criminal. And really, Jordan should have been charged for this. I don't know why they did not, because this is a pure criminal act. You can't just transfer government land, vest it in an individual name, and then not collect the full payment. So this is what happened there. I can go on in great details, but we can establish now 23 transactions that they had. Some of them, the price was 30 million per acre. That's where the 30 million came from, and it covered 335 acres. So at the same Ogle, the Lands and Survey then gave to Hopkinson 200 acres. And they didn't even describe in the lease where it was. So if you add that, it is 200 plus 335 acres. You have 535 acres at Ogle. Now, all the agreements, I asked CH&PA about how many developers have been awarded land here. And it comes up to about half of this. And they have not received a single title. Not a single developer has received any title. As President Ali pointed out, in our case, you get an agreement, you have to pay the full purchase price, and you have to develop the land. And only if you develop the land and do what you say, a year, 18 months later, or 2 years later, then you will receive title to the land, because you fulfill your promise to develop the land. And in the agreement of sale, it says that the names will be published in the official gazette. So it's not going to be, it's not secret. When the title is vested, we have to publish the name in the official gazette. So imagine all the lands that we've given out so far for private development. Not a single person has received title in these areas for housing development. Not a single one, including Ed Ahmad. They all paid 30 million per acre, the same price that they were selling the land at. Only thing, they didn't collect the money but transferred it, the land. And it's a fraction of what they've done. In just Ogle, I'm not finished as yet. I didn't even compare it with what they did at Wales or anywhere else. I'm just dealing with Ogle. So the thing is that, let's go on. Let's go. I'm coming back to that. Peters Hall now. Now another set of prime land here at Peters Hall. They had another 22 acres there. No valuation, no board, no tender process, but at Peters Hall, 22 transactions, 211 acres there. They gave leases there, and guess what in these leases? You can assign the lease, you can sell it. We have had, look how many people sold from the time they got it. They removed the part of the lease. The lease was prepared outside of Nisil and removed the part that prevents assignment. So people collect a lease from the government and then they sold the land like for $1 million US because that was what the land was worth there. And they pay a peppercorn lease, right? A very, very low lease rate, like under $200,000 per acre of lease per year. And then people turn around soon as they got the land there and they just flipped their land and sold it off. Because they were in the lease agreement, they gave them that loophole where they can assign the rights. 211 acres there. Nigel Hughes is defending some of that when we challenge it. He's defending that too. So if I were to add the 335, the 211 at Peters Hall, if I add Earl's Court and I add the 200 acres, in the 18 months or so after the no confidence or just before the no confidence, maybe in the last 2 years of the APNU regime, they gave out and transferred maybe twice or 3 times the amount of prime lands than we have done in 4.5 years. And we haven't transferred any of these lands as yet. They're rigid. You can see the lease agreement that these people have, the agreement of sale. It's rigid with a ton of preconditions on infrastructure, the quality of the housing, everything they have to put in place. Imagine that, and they're questioning our land policy. It was a pure rape of the assets of the country. And now, let's do this. So just imagine we had done that. We have now even given out half in the 4.5 years, and we haven't transferred the titles as yet. So just imagine we had done that. But simultaneously, guess what we have done? We have also transferred to people in this country, we're transferring 50,000 house lots. They didn't transfer, they did maybe 1,000 house lots because they were taking, some of the ministers themselves, like Ferguson and the others, collected house lots that PPP had put in place already, developed. So assuming you say, all right, they gave a few private developers, maybe 15 or 12 or so, developers, but who haven't received the land, they had to pay the 30 million. There's nothing wrong, nothing corrupt about it. Same price they're paying. Nigel Hughes questioning that price. So at least if you say, all right, they gave it out. But we also giving 50,000 individuals a plot of land. You didn't give any private individual, but the friends and family took it all. Nigel Hughes took some, the Amanza and her family took some. I didn't even come to that in Linden yet. I didn't even started talking about that. This is not all on land policy, you know. If I were to talk about this all day long, they took it all for themselves. The office of the president, staff, they got land at Dallawalla Creek in Linden where we were supposed to build a deepwater port. The Lowenfield got it at Millie's Hideout. The same people got at Bohemia in Berbice where another deepwater port was supposed to go. And they were all staff of the office of the president. I haven't even started about land. If we, and maybe Patterson is right, we didn't fulfill our promise. We fulfill every manifesto promise. But maybe we should have locked up some of these people. But in this court system, good luck. We got a man caught stealing an election and we can't get a trial done. Patterson with his scale, we can't even get it heard. And I think the AFC burned down that place, frankly speaking, from all that I've heard. They burned their building to prevent the evidence from surfacing. So this is, so let's come back now. So I'm not done as yet. So imagine, since the PPP has been in office, we have done about 150,000 house lots. So if you divide that crudely by 5, because for the smaller lots it's about 5 per acre, you get 30,000 acres. 30,000 acres transferred to Guyanese, 150,000 families in our period in office from 92 and now. 50,000 now, 40,000 so far, and about 110,000 in the period when we were there before. Just 30,000 acres have gone to our people, ordinary people with infrastructure and land. APNU didn't do any of that. We have given out less than 3,000 acres, by far less than 3,000 acres of commercial lands. If you look at all the lands in the first term, and now in terms of the big housing development, like for high-end housing development, less than that. Less than 10%. And it's all benefiting people. You wouldn't have had a Windsor scheme had we not done that. We wouldn't have had many of the new schemes, etc. Because and the land that we sold here, we've cross-subsidized low-income housing. We sold land commercially to these people to cross-subsidize low-income housing. That's how we, at the beginning, when we did not have money in the treasury, when we were paying, using almost 100% of revenue to service debt, and there was no housing ministry in the 90s, we could have started a housing ministry and started giving low-income people plots of land, because we were selling some of the lands to these private developers and cross-subsidizing. But in the whole tenure, we've done less than 3,000 acres, and we've given out 30,000 or more acres to ordinary people through about 150,000 house lots, developed house lots. That's our record. We're proud of it. So don't bring this bullshit about land policy and us, because this is what they like to hide behind. The APNU was corrupt. I just pointed out to you, they were just busy taking up all the lands everywhere. So any individual, and let me say something. It seems as though we have to, now I don't know, people say they're close to PPP, and whether they are or not, or they're just saying this, some of the big developers and stuff like that. But we went out here for public expression of interest. You look at that. You have the dates when the public expression of interest, and people pursuant to the public expression of interest secured lands for housing development. But they have to come with money too. They don't say anything. The group, we met with the Black Entrepreneurs Group, and they're getting 60 acres of land there, because they could not, they said to me, they could not come individually afford it. And we asked them to come in a consortium, and they're going to do a housing project. And we wish them well. You don't hear about that because we don't discriminate, and we sought to work with them. They didn't even come through the expression of interest program like all the others did. Everyone else came through the expression, but that group did not come. We met with them. I met with them at the convention center. They expressed desire to develop high-end housing and all of that. And we've been working with the group for the past 2 years, putting together the different groups of people, consortia, to get the 60 acres of land. You don't hear about that. You ask Nigel Hughes, did they get any black families to do that except those connected to them? None of those people, I believe, are, there may be the 15 or 20 people who are going to be doing this development, these two developments with the 60 acres, none of them are PPP people. Because we didn't look at it like that. APNU didn't look out for those people. They gave the land to themselves. Nigel Hughes didn't go and secure land for that group. He secured it for himself. But he represents, look after the interests of Afro-Guyanese. He said 5% of the people in Guyana getting all the lands. Well, what percentage was getting it under APNU? He and the others, as we just saw. So at the same area, the Ogley area, they're going to get 60 acres of land. And that would still, when you add the 60 acres, it's still not be half of what they gave out in the same area. But fasted it to people, hand it away. Not there with the strict preconditions to development, etc., that we have in these areas. Professional approach to it. So this is thing. And then I see all the time this vilification of people that they're PPP. So what we got to be extraordinarily stupid to say when APNU is in government like they were, you discriminate against PPP people. You even discriminated against your own supporters at the lower level. And then when we're in government, to prove we are not biased, we must discriminate against them again. That they must not get any access to contracts or land or anything else as Guyanese. So why would people even want to be associated with us? You shaft them when they're in government, your government, and then we must do the same to prove a point. They are eligible for any benefit as any other citizen. And every time they do so openly, transparently, as we've seen now, and invest their money, they're subjected to the vile vilification by the people like Nigel Hughes and the others. People who would not invest a cent, who are engaged in all sorts of criminality, would run them down. Why would they do that? Now, having said that, if they break the law, they face consequences. But it seems as though they must not get anything to prove a point. That's not going to happen. PPP supporters are eligible for benefits like anyone else. And we want them to succeed. And we would help everyone, and we'd help them too. So what's wrong with that? We must prove that we're not biased, etc. And when I'm talking, look at it's not just, and this is not a race thing. Look at how they dealt with hits and jams. You perceive them to be close to PPP, so no contract. Run them down. And now Sherwin Graves, too. Sherwin Graves will have to answer and give credible answers for the acquisition of any of his property. If he broke the law, and Ed Mamad broke the law, they must face consequences. That's our position. But they ran him down, vilified him, and wildly, the same tax evaders and these crooks who you wouldn't even want to hang around them. They're so slimy, been running him down and his family for weeks. And then express surprise when he is resigned. Now we asked Sherwin Graves when this issue surfaced. We sent all of that and we asked him, and he assured us that the sources of his funding are legitimate, and every transaction he's done is legal. And he offered to resign because he said, I can't handle this vilification anymore. He's a different person. This is a guy who's been there in CHNPA. He's helped thousands of people. Was part of our program to get the 50,000 house lots, not like the dodos that they put there and that they had it under APNU. But they don't want to see him. Although he's a black guy, they want to run him down because they perceive him close to the PPP too. Now, if he's done anything illegal, he has to face the consequences. But why do they have to hang these professionals all the time? That guy has helped thousands of people, working there hard, diligently. They don't look at the 50,000 people we're preparing house lots for. They run them down. So that's how, and we're not going to tolerate this. Now, as I said before, people break law. If you're Indo-Guyanese and PPP or Afro-Guyanese, you break the law, you face the consequences. But we're not going to allow them to vilify and to hang our people, whoever they are, Afro, Indo, Amerindians. They're all part of our circles, and we're not going to allow this to happen. They just hung that guy every week, and they can publish anything. And the sources often, and they would never publish the response. That's why I'm hoping they'll publish all Nigel Hughes, his transgressions. But you would see, it'll get mere passing. Look at this Terence Campbell, a big tax evader, holier than thou, looking for relevance, whole days posing like a child, looking for relevance, and they think he is some great, it's just so sickening. And nothing, absolutely nothing. Nobody knows who he is, and they don't care too much about him. He's a big tax evader. I'm going to share with you today, because now they've verified that the tax write-off he got was actually true. The $138 million of tax write-off, because he claimed his company was bankrupt and got a tax write-off from the JR. Please publish it in full, so that when the records are shown, that people would know that this was a guy who under APNU was allowed to evade all these taxes and keep people VAT money that they paid for himself. That's crooked behavior. That's corrupt behavior. It's not. So I'm going to share that with you too. I hope you publish it in full, because it's legitimate record. And since they like to share people's record, Nigel, you sharing the agreement with CHNPA, we need to do this now more often. So we are not on the back foot on this land issue. We're never going to be. They did it in 2015, and through innuendos and lies, they created the impression that, oh, it was big corruption under the PPP. We have some robust systems in place. I'm not saying occasionally people don't fall, we don't have a crack, and you may have something corrupt creeping through the system. But in terms of systems, we have put in place robust agreements to safeguard the wealth of the people of this country. That's why not a single one of those housing developers that were awarded agreements through a bidding process have received any title to the land as yet. And they could, and if they don't do what the covenants state, they will not receive the title. And that's why we've seen such massive developments, because we hold people to their business plan. Like Nigel Hughes, he submitted the business plan, but nothing there. But he got the land for they got the land for $10 million per acre. And he complains, oh, 30 million is too low. So that's on land issue. The president spoke about the DAB, and as he outlined in the release outline, there is nothing new to add, because the process is a confidential one, and we're still examining all the details as to whether we will go to full arbitration, because this was more a dispute resolution board, and we will examine now whether we want to go to full arbitration on the matter. So he dealt with that when he spoke extensively. I just wanted to say that I saw something in, I think it's Starbuck News, about the Grove residents distress at the destruction of tombs. I told the NDC chairman and the Minister of Health to meet with them, to arrange to meet with the people there. If we're building these drainage pumps and systems, which are crucial to drain large communities like Diamond Grove, etc., we have to do so, and we have to meet with people and discuss this with them. We can't go in a heavy-handed manner and just dig up things. So they're going to be meeting with the residents there. I saw this in the news, and it came to my attention today, so I just made a call. I think I'm going to end there. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jagdeo, Rihanna, Kaichur News. You just spoke about the land issue, and you said that there will be, if there is found to be any criminal or any corrupt behavior, there will be the persons will face consequences. Could you say if, in the case of Mr. Greaves, if there will be a similar investigation and possibly, if anything, if he's found culpable, charges as is in the case with Mr. Brutus? Well,
he has assured us, and so far from what he said to us, is I consider it credible that he has legitimately acquired the property. And so we'll have to examine that, but right now we are not going to witch hunt people on the basis of conjecture. In Brutus's case, I had a lot of detail, lots of details were there in the documentation. It was egregious. It was hundreds of transactions that we saw, and we were convinced that it warranted that sort of investigation. So right now, may or may not, depending on what emerges, may or may not happen, but we're not going to run down people on the basis of what social media posts, especially from people who are crooked. And Nigel Hughes. You think we should investigate Nigel Hughes for taking lands after the elections? Is not a corrupt thing? Should we investigate and charge him for getting 75 acres, 50 of which came after the elections? Should we launch an investigation there too? Next thing you'd hear, oh, it is running down your opponents, etc. That, I believe, is a corrupt activity, especially coming from someone who said, in election year, we must pause doing these things. He did it after they had lost the elections. So yeah, go on.
My other question is in relation to Mr. Ahmad. You said that you called him a red herring and that your government is basically being placed in a bad light because of just association. But how can you explain dealing with somebody who has a criminal record? He was convicted for fraud and money laundering and all of that. And you have dealt with him in the past. You have given him land at several plots of land. There's one particular issue at Lenora to build a wood processing factory at way below market value. And now that has been converted into a multi-million-dollar housing scheme. How do you explain leaving that the way it is with no ramification and no consequence?
So if you look at a report that was tabled in Parliament for every privatization done from 1992 to 2012, every single privatization that we did was done in a report and tabled in Parliament in 2012, including for that transaction. Transparently done. So I'm not going to get sucked back into kite show news thing, go back to the past and rumor monger again. That's precisely what they want to do. That's what they did in 2015. You can go and check. It's in a public document. So I'm not going to go there. Now, first of all, personally, I didn't even know that there was an agreement with Ed Ahmad. Personally, I did not even know that. Like the critic thing that I get vilified for, sometimes I found out that he was awarded a contract after the contract was awarded, because I didn't go to cabinet. I didn't go to cabinet. So, was it wrong? So, Ed Ahmad from the CHNPA has done that. If we have to not deal with people, how could a man who killed a person, like Glenn Lal, he killed a person, never got charged for it, and he wants to run for the presidency of the country? He's asking people of Guyana, a murderer, to vote for him. Now let me just give you the same logic, the logic of it. So there are lots of people who have been convicted in this country and still are getting contracts, benefits from people. There are lots of them, PNC people too. I don't know whether CHNPA took that into consideration, so you should find out from them. But to tell me that about people's past criminality, so they must not get any benefit from the country anymore. If that's the case, then we might as well say anybody who has had a conviction. I wonder if Nigel Hughes got a conviction, or anyone else there. They had a conviction. And Norton probably would have had a conviction if they had succeeded in saying that he raped Vanessa Kissoon. Or he threatened to rape Vanessa Kissoon, if they had succeeded there. My point is that duplicitous. Imagine a Kaichor News coming to ask me about people's criminal records and about whether they should benefit from government activities, when the owner of that paper, the guy, and this is not a regular media. I would deal with a regular media differently. This is a party newspaper. The owner killed somebody and got off, was engaged in people smuggling, and now is the conscience of the country. So you got my answer there. Ask CHNPA if they took that into consideration when they awarded him the contract. Ask CHNPA. So, my own view as the general secretary of the party, that should not really come from criminal organization. Get Starbuck News to ask me that, or one of the others, not from the criminal organization. Yes.
Without being disrespectful or anything, sir.
Yeah.
What you said there just now.
No,
This is two different situations. Mr. Ahmad
No,
was
no, no.
convicted.
No.
And this
Two
is a
different
rumor.
situations. So
This is a rumor.
You're defending Glenn Lal
You're
criminality.
saying, you are saying
All right,
that.
move on.
Okay, let
Yes.
me move on.
Yeah.
The next question, sir. Given your soft approach to Mr. Greaves, can we expect to see him in other positions in the public sector, or probably working for the party?
I don't know. I don't know at this stage. My
Will he
soft
be
position
rehired?
with Greaves, I just don't like people because they're perceived to be PPP to be discriminated against and hounded down by a set of criminals. That is what I am concerned about. Greaves, if Greaves does anything wrong, he has to face the music. I've always said that. But people have their families to all these low lives every day running him down. And because, and maybe he's not of the right class in, Nigel Hughes' class and the others, because they don't like ordinary black people. I don't think so. Or PPP black people. They don't like them. They just want to run them down. It's the same thing Luncheon faced. Luncheon faced this for years. He was accused of everything under the sun. Collie Moore, Shirley Edwards, all of them, they had to battle for this country. Kwame McCoy faced that too. Well, he is stronger. He'll fight back too. But every day they face this sort of thing. No, and Indo-Guyanese and Amerindians and mixed people, forget them. They don't even matter. They don't even matter in this group. So that is what irks me. That anytime you got a bunch of criminals are talking about land policy, and Nigel Hughes, look at his transgressions and shamelessly questions the price. And he, through the company, negotiated in the same area for 26 and 10. He complaining about 30. He said, pause things, and he got it after the election. You don't believe that we will get irritated by this? You don't believe we will get irritated? And this Clown Glenlal, who tries to constantly presents himself, TikTok lal, you know, stupid. The guy doesn't understand anything. But you know, I see them questioning the cash grant, by the way, and now we've said it over and over again. The same staff in finance got to work on the budget. They're responsible for this. We want to do it in a clean manner. Next thing, people impersonate and all of that. We're trying to address it. For the 5 regions, we didn't have the money until yesterday. Yesterday, the budget was appropriated for every region except in 7, 8, 9, 1. No. It's ongoing every day. It's ongoing, but it takes time. It got to be done diligently, and people will get their money. We're not going to be rushed to do it because it's nobody. It's not your money or my money. It's the taxpayers' money. It got to be done properly with the right verification and everything else. You let them cut checks for 10 people that were not eligible, and then the same Klong Lal and the others would come up and say PPP corruption, and APNU would jump on it. So that is can we do it? Everybody will get their money. It'll be done diligently. And I want to thank the staff at finance for their patience. These are hard-working public servants who are managing this, and all their volunteers. This is a huge undertaking to get in a country. It's only the uninitiated would make glib comments about this sort of thing. The uninitiated, people who have never run anything, who just pump a zet all around the place. Oh, okay. I don't know. Ask Pasha. Ask Pasha. He is the finance secretary, and he will tell you. But I can tell you that they're trying to be, whilst getting it to people, to be diligent. I saw some pictures from Region 1 a couple of days ago. The RA on the other sent me. They're doing the shut-in. They're going to their homes now. So they've already started going to people's home in some area. But it's 600,000 people you got to go to. You know, more. And people will get their money. So,
yes, Dr. Jagdeo, Cordell Jones from Livewire News. I'd like to take your attention to Region 6. Now, the coordinator for the Rapid Response Task Force in that area, Dr. Virasamy, has resigned recently from his position, citing corruption, among other factors. Would you care to comment on this?
I saw the region dealt with Ramaya. I don't want to really deal with Ramaya. Ramaya said I called him. I think the last time, if you check my phone, I can show you. The last time I've had contact with Ramaya was like maybe every time his contract comes to an end, he has this way of resigning. He resigned several times before. Let me see. I should tell you. Ramaya. Let me check my phone here. So, June 16, 2024. Happy Father's Day, Mr. Vice President. Divine blessings. March 12, 2024. It's coming up to March again. A letter to President Irfan Ali. I'm writing to inform you of my resignation. So that was March 2024, he's resigning. So I think it's a one-year contract. The region thinks it's a way of him every time to increase the benefits of his contract. I saw the region put out something that not only we're paying 400,000, but he is getting like his home, they're renting his home as his office for 70,000, gets driver and all sorts of people. So July 8, 2023 was the post before that. No. January 1, 2024, Happy New Year. July 8, 2023, about electric bikes. I don't really, I may call this guy occasionally or something like that when they're fighting and all kinds of things. Yeah, griper. But I don't really pay too much attention to Ramaya. People know who Ramaya is. We've been gracious to these people. We've given them a job in government. He constantly has a list of demands all the time. I want these people, I want this, I want that. I want a vehicle with certain CC capacity. I don't have time to deal with all of the capricious behavior of all of these people and to babysit them. Every minute they got a little problem. Somebody approve the payment for his gasoline to go anywhere else. They want to contact me to make a trip into Kanchi. I got to be contacted. I don't deal with that sort of thing. Ramaya, I thought the region responded appropriately. Let them deal with it there. Yes, Kaichur, I'm giving you again. You all said, yeah.
Kaichur special, very special people.
Yeah.
You said so.
Especially
Anyways,
crooked, yes. Especially crooked. Yeah, you're right.
Sometimes
Especially
crooked is good, It's not
crooked is good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much
Sometimes
for
if you go
saying
too
that.
straight, you might crash up.
Thank you very much for saying that. I can't fault you on that. Go.
Anyways, Dr. Jagdeo, I know in the past you've said that Guyana won't have to borrow loans sometime in the future, but we've been borrowing loans since 1966. Since 2020, we've increased the loan. We have tripled the loan. We have earned close to $6 billion from the oil sector, and our loan is almost
but
how
when did I say that we would not have to borrow as a country?
No, I think I asked you before.
And when did I say that? When would I say that we don't have to borrow? Because the United States of America borrows. Because if you borrow and invest in expanding economic wealth for people and opportunities, it's good borrowing. That's why businessmen grow. They borrow so that they can expand and to make money. So that's a philosophy that is wrong. Maybe it comes out of APNU, but they borrowed so much. It couldn't come from them. They borrowed so much that we became bankrupt. So my point is that our borrowing must not overload our capacity to repay, nor must it burden future generations. That's the philosophy. And I've demonstrated to you how the debt has come down. So from 900% of GDP to about 16% of GDP. That's a huge change. And using about 5-6% of revenue to service debt, down from 100%. You would agree that that's sustainable. I dealt with the stock of external debt too, and showed that in nominal terms, it is today around the same figure as 20 odd years, nearly 30 years ago, and our economy has grown 71 times bigger today than it was at that time. And our debt, external debt, is around the same figure like it was in the past. So for domestic borrowing, there are different kinds of borrowing. The United States and other countries sometimes borrow for open market operations as a monetary tool. So they conduct not to finance the fiscal, but also for open market operations. So there was a time in the past when the central bank will issue treasury bills, and they call it to mop up liquidity because the inflationary pressure in the economy, not that they're using the money to reduce the inflationary pressure in the economy. So they borrow through open market operations. It's a cost to monetary policy too. And so you got to differentiate what kind of borrowing. If you borrow now to consume, to eat, like what APNU was doing for a substantial period, that is why we accumulated this big debt, then that's bad borrowing. But if you're borrowing to expand productive capacity and your overall capacity to repay is so small that it's one of the best figures in the world now we have in terms of capacity to repay. I've demonstrated this a million times. You notice that they don't deal with that issue. The capacity to repay, how it's evolved over time, or the philosophy of borrowing, or what we spend on. And that is why it has to be situated. This is precisely why I argued that they cannot just make these wild promises without situating them in a context, an overall framework which governs the budget. If you don't do this, every promise they make is nonsense. And I said to people, a number of people, don't follow the nonsense. You're just giving them credibility by trying to cause these nonsensical proposals. Make them seem credible. They're nonsense. So that is my answer on borrowing generally.
Just for some clarity, I think what people are concerned about is that we are spending some of the oil money for development right now. And we have earned only about 6 billion, but our debt is almost that high as well. So they're concerned if we can repay, or how we're going to repay this debt in the future, or will we still be paying debt way into the future without having a great reduction? Or
no, but
people want to feel safe.
Yeah, so that is again, you got to look at the debt. So the external debt is around the same level. They're around the same level. So if the economy has grown significantly. So capacity to pay is based on the size of the economy. Now, if our total debt is today a fraction of the economy, like the whole economy, just 16% of the economy, consider the US, which is over 100%. Their debt is 100%, equals the size of their economy. In Japan, it's 2.5 times the size of their economy. Our debt is 16% of the size of our economy. That's how you assess this. That's how you assess it. And future revenue, in a single year revenue in maybe 2 years' time would allow us to eliminate all of the debt in 1 year. No country in the world is absolutely debt-free. But we are at 16%. The lowest figure in this area, in the hemisphere. What do you want us to do? You want us to, all right, say, I don't understand. If you don't want us to spend on people's roads or power plants or hospitals or schools or anything of that sort, I just can't understand. As an economist, I can't understand what point they're trying to make. They are, not you. They're trying to make, because I suspect that you're just repeating what they're saying. I don't understand the point, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And it's hard, it's good to rebut. It's exciting to rebut things that are technical, even if it's robust and it puts us on the spot. But when you have dunderhead kind of approach to this thing. Not you, I mean the other people. It's like hard. You're trying to rebut it so people don't get misled by the dunderheadedness. But at the same time, it's really tough to make a technical argument to rebut dunderheadedness. That's it. For us, it's really tough sometimes to do that. So Ashley Singh has been trying, and I gave up a long time.
So you're clear, right? You said not me, but I'm just focused on the issue.
Yeah,
of
yes,
if we'll
yes.
be able-
Because
I'm
this
not saying
is-
that you should invest in roads and so forth.
but this is their argument. This is their argument. I see it often by the opposition. I say it often, but I don't understand because it doesn't make sense. Okay, thank you. You want? Okay, thank you. Oh, Cardell, you? Oh, thank you. Oh, yes. Yeah, go on.
Good afternoon, Near Mahler here. 1 minute, please. Good afternoon, Near Mahler. I'm Stark from Daily News. I have two questions.
Yeah, sure.
Dr. Jagdeo, has the government received any words from the U.S. authorities regarding the information the government had requested regarding the alleged money laundering and gold smuggling by the Mohammeds? And also last night, businessman Azruddin Mohammed said that the 100,000 cash grant is coming at a snail's pace. Would you care to comment on that?
I don't know, because the last time I checked, we did not receive all the information, but Anil Nandalal should know more about this, whether we receive all the information we requested to launch the full investigation. The claim was that by the U.S. government, that when they were sanctioned, that when they sanctioned the Mohammeds, is that they smuggled gold out of Guyana and they evaded over $10 billion in taxes. So that's a claim that led to the sanction. They have not, up to the point in time I was following up on the matter, we didn't get the details of it at that time. We may have by now, so you should check on that. I don't want to comment on what Azruddin Mohammed says about the cash grant. I think people are entitled to an opinion, especially if you've never run anything that is complex. If you've never run anything that's complex. This is not posing for a picture. Running government is not posing for a photo op. It's not, it's much more complex. And at the right time, I already said, at the right time, we will deal with those comments in greater detail and in all their complexities. I'm just waiting for that time. Then I will deal with it, should that time come about. Thank you.
Hi.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Jagdeo, Saskia Wark from NCN News. In light of the recent trade wars between the U.S. and other countries, could you share your views on this matter and the possible effects, if any, it could have here in Ghana?
Yeah, well, it seems as though so far that the implementation of tariff to Canada and Mexico have been averted for a while, at least for a month. We are going to have to rely on exports for our prosperity. Earlier in my press conference, I spoke of APNU claims that we can be a demand-driven country. The United States of America, because of its huge purchasing power, could drive their prosperity and economic growth from internal demand. Even China, at the beginning, could not have done this. But over the years, China has reoriented from a lot of its export orientation to bolstering domestic demand. And China is a country that has scale, 1.4 billion people. So they may be able to get more of their prosperity from internal demand. Small countries cannot do that. They rely heavily on export markets for their products to enhance prosperity. That is why we have to keep our rates competitive, so our agriculture, our manufacturing, a whole range of activities that they're done competitively, that our exchange rate policy doesn't affect their global competitiveness, and then globally, that you have a sympathetic environment for products out of the global south. And that is why we've always supported special and differential treatment for countries coming from the global south. Should that change, and the tariff regime changes globally for the small countries, I don't think President Trump has said that he wants that done. But should that change, it can adversely affect many countries. But there is no suggestion that President Trump has said that he wants that done. He has named a number of countries, particularly China, Canada, and Mexico, and then the European Union, possibly. The tightening of global trade could have negative effects, and also, in some cases, maybe through diversion of trade, positive effects at some places. Because if some markets are closed off and you have an oversupply of production, the price could come down for the other markets. So I don't want to speculate too much on those issues, but we are looking at all of these issues. Clearly, we have to remain engaged with the U.S. government in ensuring that there is, for the Caribbean countries particularly, a favorable environment for our trade with the U.S. You know, we have had some special treatment with the U.S. for a long time, and we hope that those don't get eroded. That's why I suspect engaging with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and allowing the U.S. administration very early on to understand that our trade is below some de minimis level. We can't distort global trade. For example, once when we were meeting Obama, I said to him, I was representing CARICOM there, that in the United States of America, in a single building, maybe in New York, you have more people than, say, St. Kitts and Nevis, the combined population of St. Kitts and Nevis working. How could you expect St. Kitts and Nevis to compete on the same basis, like with full reciprocity in global trade, with the United States of America, when you have that big disparity in economic strength? So it's up to us to ensure that the U.S. administration, President Trump administration, don't allow the issues that they have with Canada and Mexico, which are large global trading partners, to affect us. And it requires probably lobbyists, not just for Guyana, but also for the region, to engage with the new U.S. administration to ensure that those complexities are in their thinking when they announce trade policies. So, thank you.